Have you ever had to mediate a disagreement between two employees? Yeah, how'd that go? As a manager, you need to be well schooled in when and how to successfully mediate a disagreement between two of your employees. That is the subject of this video. As a manager, you need to be well schooled in when and how to successfully mediate a disagreement between two of your employees. Of course, that's always the last option. You really want to create a culture where before your employees come to you for you to help them resolve an issue, they have attempted to resolve it on their own. That's the way the best, most productive teams do it. So hopefully you've created a culture like that. If you haven't yet created that culture, you'll probably want to take a look at a video I did recently titled How to Stop Passive-Aggressive Behavior in the Workplace. The subject of that is creating that culture where employees first attempt to resolve differences between themselves. And only if that's not possible, then do they come and involve you in the process, asking for your leadership role. So take a look at that video if you haven't. If you've already done that, then let's talk about when and how to successfully mediate disagreements between employees. There are certain situations where it is very appropriate for you to intervene and help people resolve their disagreements. Let's talk about what some of those situations are. Number one, if your employees have attempted to resolve their differences, but they unsuccessfully did so, then it's time for you to step in and help them out a little bit. A second situation is if in fact you have one person who has a very strong dominant personality and they are having a disagreement with somebody who's got kind of a weak, maybe a passive personality, that interaction between the two of them is probably not going to bode very well for the passive person. So you need to kind of help them level the playing field in terms of power situation by mediating between them. A third situation is if other team members have started taking sides. So now you've got two people who are directly involved in a disagreement, and the rest of the team is now choosing to align themselves with one or the other person. So you've got real divisiveness on your team. That situation suggests you need to step up and provide some mediation to help them resolve that disagreement quickly. And a fourth situation is if a policy has been violated. Policy violations are really not appropriate for employees to resolve on their own. That falls under your purview. So those are some of the main situations that would suggest it's appropriate for you to mediate. Now, in terms of mediation, one of the most important things is they need strong leadership from you. Let's face it, a lot of these situations exist simply because the people involved can't resolve it on their own. So the strength from you really kind of translates into you do need to be a referee. You do need to be a judge. You do need to control every aspect of this conversation. But before you get into the mediation, a key step is to meet with each one of them separately. I can't stress how important that is. People have tried to do mediation before they collected information from the participants, and they got in there and all of a sudden they didn't know what was going on because they hadn't taken the time ahead of time to ask each one of them their side of the story. So my suggestion for you is to meet with each one of them. And I'm going to talk in the video about two people just for ease of talking, but you may in fact have 3 or 4 people. So what I'm going to suggest is that you talk to the first person. And of course, you're going to want to ask both of them the same questions. So what you're wanting to do is collect information from each one of them on what happened in their perspective. So questions might be, tell me your side of the story. What do you think the main issue is? Why has it been difficult for you to resolve this with this other person? What do you believe would be a good resolution? What are some of the things you're not willing to do? What are some of the things you are willing to do? And ask those same questions of both people. Then it's time for you to do some of your own preparation. So I suggest after you've collected information from both of them, you sit down and do your homework. And again, I can't stress how important it is for you to do your homework so that you know kind of ahead of time how this is going to play out. Some of the things that you're going to want to focus on as you sit down is you've collected information from both of them. What do you think's going on? What do you think the main issue is? Secondly, what about the personality of each person? And in particular, as you relate to their personality, how do they attempt to control other people or control conversations? Because you are certainly going to see that happen right in front of your eyes when you get these people together. Another thing I think it would be wise for you to spend some time thinking about is, has there been any issues between these people in the past? Now, you may want to ask them that question ahead of time also, but whether they told you there was or there wasn't, think in your mind, did you realize there was trouble or disagreements between these two people beforehand? So is the issue that you're dealing with now a brand new issue, or is it kind of a residual issue from something that happened before? What do you think the resolution of this is? Is there a good way that you think to resolve this? Now, you always want to get the two parties or four parties, however many it is, get them to suggest the way to solve this. But you can't go into this mediation without you having in your mind a clear understanding of, if they don't come up with anything, what are you going to suggest? So you got to have that in mind before you go. So after you've done all of your homework, you collected information from them, you've got your extra together, then and only then do you pull the two of them together. And then it's a matter of going over ground rules. Now, I suggest that in terms of ground rules, you have these written down. And you may want to have them on a sheet of paper in front of each one of them, or you may want to have a tent card. And on the side of the tent card that's facing the person, you could even have one tent card in between two people, and on each side you could have the guidelines. These are the rules or the guidelines for this mediation. And after we go over these, we have got to agree that both of you are going to follow the guidelines. That's the only way that this is going to work. Of course, you can come up with your own guidelines, but let me give you some to start with, some that I think would serve you well in this mediation. The first one is to have people agree that they will be sticking to the issue. No getting off on tangents of things that really don't have anything to do with what you're there for. And in alignment with that, tell them that if they do get off track and bring into the discussion something that is not appropriate, something that is not relevant, that you're going to interrupt them and bring them right back into focus. Now, if you have to interrupt, I know that's difficult for some people to do. In this situation, you need to control the flow of this conversation. You need to control every aspect of it. And if that means interrupting, you need to be capable of interrupting. And the best way to interrupt, I have found, is by calling somebody's first name. So if I'm using my own name as the person who is running on and talking about things that we don't need to hear, it would be Craig. Craig, excuse me, Craig, we need to stop and get back on track, and just use the person's first name as a way to interrupt them. But you got to explain to them, you're going to stick to the issue. If you start getting off the issue, I'm going to interrupt, and I may even interrupt if we've gotten enough from you and we need to cut you off because you're talking too long and I need to get the other person involved in the conversation. Another thing that you want to talk about is that they need to respect each other. Now, they can disagree on different points during the discussion, but they cannot disrespect each other. So what that then involves is no interrupting, no raising their voice, no swearing, no personal attacks. And again, you've got to manage this. And so if that starts happening, you need to refer them back to the guidelines that they agreed to before you ever started. Another thing that you're going to talk about is kind of the flow of this whole thing. Explain to them the process that you're going to manage so that as you're going through it, and they'll understand it. And the process is similar to, tell me, person A, your side, what you believe the issue is. Explain to me in your own words how you view this. And then say, and while person A is talking, person B, you'll be doing nothing but listening. And after person A is done, person B, you will then paraphrase what you heard. And after you paraphrase what you think you heard, I'm going to go back to person A and said, is that paraphrase accurate? And if the person says it's accurate, then I'm going to come back to you and say, well, then respond to what you just heard them say. And if person A says, no, that's not what I said, they didn't hear it correctly, then I will say to person A, then say it again. And after they say it again, I'll say, now person B, paraphrase it again. And when they get the paraphrase correct, depending on how many times that takes, then I'll let that person respond to that statement. And then I'll go back to person B and say, now, give us something new. Tell us something additional beyond your response to what they just said. And that's the process, back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Illuminating all the issues, and then it's up to you to decide who talks next, who gets the chance to respond, to flesh out all the information you need to eventually get to where you say, so tell me now, since we're at this point, what you believe is the best way to resolve this issue. And what do you believe is the best way to resolve this issue? And now, how are we going to agree? Because before we leave today, we've got to agree that we're all on the same page and we're going to walk out of here expecting the very same thing. This is the way we all have chosen to resolve this issue. And of course, you may, beyond that point, also set up subsequent meetings, kind of checking in to make sure everything's going the way you want it to go. These can go very, very well, or they can go horribly. And let me tell you, the way that it goes depends way more on you, your knowledge of mediation, your strength as a leader in this mediation, in controlling what happens, than it ever depends on the people you have involved or the issue. So, good luck with your mediation. Come up with your ground rules, do your homework, and I wish you well for many, many successful mediations. That's my perspective. What's yours? Swing by our website, leave us a comment or a question. Check out other videos like this one, and if you like this one, please pass it on. It's been a pleasure being with you. Till next time, successful mediations. See you.